What's going on, everybody? Tom Westerholm here with Connor Ryan. We are going to talk about Kadeem Allen's debut performance over the last couple of days.
I mean, it's the number one kind of headline we really have to address at this point. I mean, it's kind of a slow news day, but I think we can find a few things just to kind of drag this out a little bit.
Yeah, we'll make the Kadeem Allen stuff work. No, Kyrie Irving out for the season. Unbelievably tough break for the Celtics. Obviously, you could kind of see it coming a little bit. Could kind of see the team
writing on the wall.
Yeah, it never really seemed like that they were particularly hopeful about his prognosis for the rest of the season. But it does sound like there's some good news in other places. Connor, why don't you kind of break things down a little bit? I'm going to get this thing tweeted out, and then we'll get into it. But yeah, if you could just kind of give everybody the rundown in case anybody doesn't have a Twitter account and somehow missed all the news.
Yeah, so I mean, as Tom kind of said, the writing was a little bit on the wall. I mean, when you see Kyrie underwent that first surgery to take that wire out of his knee back on, I think, the final week of March. When that initial thing happened, the recovery, timetable was 3 to 6 weeks, which, again, you can kind of hold out hope, I guess, if you're a Celtics fan in terms of looking at, could he be back? Could Kyrie Irving be back maybe second round, third round? And at that point, you kind of start weighing, in what capacity could he come back or something like that. So the writing was kind of on the wall as to what you would kind of expect from someone like Kyrie to come back from knee surgery right in the middle of, a postseason push when obviously the games are going to start really kind of ramping up now. But if you look at, the new development is, today it was announced that, they went through that surgery to remove that wire in his knee. It finds out that some of the screws from that surgically repaired knee were actually infected.
Right.
So that's pretty much the major kind of, next step is they have to take those out, which means it's going to be about 4 to 5 months of recovery at this point. So that's obviously going to sideline him for a little bit. But, at least now when you look at it, it's kind of the final... it's pretty finite now that he's not going to be back. And again, as you said, it's tough for, I think, Celtics fans to kind of reach that reality that, you're not going to see him back this postseason, but at least now you kind of know what you kind of have for this little postseason run of what you can do. Obviously, the younger guys are really going to get a lot of minutes now, and at least now that, they're looking forward to next year and they're prioritizing Kyrie's health for next year, when obviously you're going to have Hayward back and you're going to have more guys healthy, when you can really have a really more sustained run.
Yeah, exactly. And Rick Shaw in the comments here says tough break all around this season. Yes, that about sums
up the entire season. Right?
But yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. The Celtics are definitely looking ahead to 2018, 2019. Obviously, when you can bring back Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving, that's like adding a star in free agency. Obviously, with Hayward, I mean,
right.
they didn't get at all a look at what he could bring to the team. Was talking about this with a guy on Twitter today, and the point differential for the Rockets was like +8. The Warriors was +7 this year. The Celtics was like +4. Like they were in that range. We don't know what that would have been if they had Hayward.
Right.
So if you can bring everybody back next season, you can be right up there with all those contenders. Obviously, this season you got all these developmental minutes with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. That's huge. Those guys look like studs. And when you look at what some of the lineups the Celtics can put out next year, their starting lineup in that opening Cleveland game was Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, Al Horford. That's really good.
Yeah.
I don't know how you stop that lineup.
Right.
So, this is obviously a big blow in the immediate term. Long term, obviously, there's still a lot of hope, but I think we should probably talk a little bit about the immediate term here. Like you were saying, it does sound like the issue was those infected screws. The knee is structurally sound. That's the big thing. Obviously, there was I think there was a little confusion on Twitter about what that meant.
Right.
That means that the muscles and like the ligaments and that kind of stuff, that's all fine. It's just the bone, which is good news. I mean, I saw the Derrick Rose comparisons being tossed around, and I just don't that's not quite it.
No.
It's
you don't have the full red sirens going off right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like this is kind of the thing where you could start seeing is this something that's going to be like a prolonged issue for him where it's going to start falling down a little bit. It's like, no, this is honestly, if you look at the infected screws and how they got to this point, it seems like it was more or less a little bit of just bad luck in the overall kind of way this kind of took that next step to having him being out long term.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost comparable to sort of the Hayward situation in that Hayward's injury was the broken ankle. It was the bone issue, not the muscle issue.
Right.
They ended up being really lucky that it wasn't a more kind of worse issue with Hayward that way. Same thing with Kyrie. This is a bone issue. They've got to remove those screws. I saw somebody on Twitter that it actually is a doctor, which I am not, obviously, saying that the holes in the knee would have to fill in, and that's part of the issue. And that's a problem, but it's a solvable problem. You don't want to have holes.
You don't don't want that for playoff basketball.
Generally, it helps to not have holes in your bones. But yeah, so in the short term, the Celtics, they were in trouble anyway. I mean, there was always, it always sounded unlikely that he was going to be back for the first round. When you have a procedure in like the March 20-something and the playoffs start April, 15 or so, I don't care how minimally invasive the knee procedure.
That's like the number one trend now on Twitter now is the minimally invasive, and I see like there's like Darth Vader getting his surgery. I see all these people like pushing minimally invasive with that. So again, as you said, you weren't gonna expect much from him, especially in the first couple rounds coming off of knee surgery. Knee surgery is still knee surgery, no matter how minimally invasive it is.
Exactly. So and like that was to be expected. So they're at this point, the Celtics could easily lose in the first round, but that was going to be the case anyway. It was the more of the question before was if they can win in the first round, then they maybe get some of these guys back in the second round, and they could still get Marcus Smart back in the second round. It sounds like his no real updates there the last time somebody asked Stevens about it, but it does sound like he's improving at the rate that he's supposed to be improving. So the second round still does kind of sound like the goal for him. But the bigger thing is that the Celtics were really hoping to beat Milwaukee or Washington or Miami and then get Kyrie and Smart back healthy and ready to go for the rest of the playoffs. And that's the real blow here, is that's off the table. I think you can pretty much pencil any hope of beating Toronto or beating
getting out
Cleveland.
of the second round. Yeah, I mean, getting out of the first round obviously seems like it's going to be a little bit of a tough uphill climb for them now, but getting off one of those top tier teams in the East, which again, even just adding someone like Kyrie could really put you over the top. But when you don't have a guy like him where you can just kind of give the ball to and you can stay in the fight getting baskets, it's going to be tough to kind of overcome that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we saw it against Milwaukee on Tuesday. The Celtics really struggled to put the ball in the hoop. And I mean, that was partially because they literally did not have a healthy point guard on the roster. Terry Rozier was out. Shane Larkin was out. That was one of the weirdest games I've seen. Kadeem Allen started, which was amazing. I'm very happy for Kadeem Allen. But yeah, so Kyrie, they've just been missing that extra punch. They just don't have that go-to scorer. That was always the biggest thing. They've got all these guys who can kind of get them, to the next quarter, who can keep them in the game, who can make it so they're up by 2 or down by 4 down the stretch. And then you've got your closer. Kyrie Irving was always the closer. He's just such an unbelievable isolation player that they have turned into a pick-and-roll threat, into a handoff threat, into all of these different things. He's such an unbelievable talent that they were able to really, utilize him in that way while still giving everybody else the chance to develop. And now that's out the window. So I think that's the toughest break. Any of these teams in the first round can now beat them. Milwaukee has Giannis. Milwaukee's a little, there's some issues going on there. They're not very cohesive. But they still have Giannis.
The best player on the court.
Yes, absolutely.
Which in a playoff series, sometimes all you need to kind of put you over the top, especially when you're going up against a weakened team like the Celtics are right now, obviously.
Well, and the funny thing is going to be that I think you could make the case that maybe all three of these teams are going to have the best player on the court. I mean, it's questionable with Miami. Yeah, Goran Dragic is good, but he and Al Horford were both all-stars this year. But any of these teams in the first round, I mean, John Wall, Bradley Beal, I mean, you could make the case that Bradley Beal's been better than John Wall this year. But either way, Brad Beal has just been amazing. Yeah. And, those guys are going to be a real problem. Got Chris here saying, I'm still not scared. He believes in Terry Rozier and Jaylen Brown. Yeah, I mean, Terry's
ready
been
for
really good.
Terry?
Yeah.
That's pretty much what the Celtics are going to need to get out of the first round.
Well, and that's going to be really interesting, too, because Terry Rozier has been really upping his value this season, and I think you can look at it and be like, wow, this guy's going to be really good coming off the bench next year. I don't know that Terry Rozier wants to come off the bench anymore. That guy's getting close to being a starter in this league, and he's, still very young. He's got all of these NBA tools where he's, so athletic, he can shoot. Obviously, he can, crash down the lane for layups and stuff like that, and he's a great defender. So, Rozier is going to be an interesting case. He's got a real chance to make himself look like a starter in the postseason if he leads the Celtics out of the first round.
There you go.
That'll basically do it. I think, he's making himself. I made the joke on Twitter a couple of days ago that you can just see the little, it's just the little dollar sign amount above his head. It just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. His value is just going through the roof. So, the Celtics do have players. Irving's out, but like they still have like young talent. They'll still be fun to watch.
Right.
That's
it's not going to be just like a slow slog through these playoffs where they get bounced. They're still going to put up competitive games. Brad Stevens still going to try to draw together a game plan. He's still going to have the pieces to be competitive. It's just, again, when you don't have someone who's a closer like Kyrie in these kind of close playoff matchups to kind of get you over the top there, there's only so much you can kind of do, especially once you hit playoff basketball.
I think it was either 2 years ago or last year that Memphis just had like the most insanely injured roster that I've ever seen in my life. I think it might have been last year, and everybody was out. I mean, they were down to like they were just down to like the absolute bottom of the roster, going up against the Spurs, I think, in the first round, and they just got smoked.
Just sad. It's like when a sitcom is like in the last season and they just replace all the actors and they can carry the magic for like another year. It's like, no, just end it. Like, don't drag it out anymore.
It was Scrubs season 9. Right. But yeah, that's not the Celtics this year. The Celtics, they might not have JD and Turk, but they still have really good characters. Like they've still got some really strong pieces, and they're still going to be fun to watch. I think that Milwaukee game was intriguing just because it was like. It was just like, how's Brad Stevens gonna wiggle his way out of this one? So I think that if Celtics fans should be encouraged, that there is nothing structurally wrong with Irving's knee. He should be okay. He needs this procedure. He'll be back. They'll be really, really good next year. There's going to be a ton of intrigue around next year's training camp, obviously, with him and Hayward returning, and just how that's all going to fit together. So there's going to be a lot to talk about for sure. But I just don't think that I don't think that there's much hope for the rest of this season.
Yeah.
Maybe get to the second round. If they do, that'll be a little bit of an upset, but not impossible. Either way, I think that's where things stand at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty much just a tough break, as you said, and I mean, I think it's unfortunate that why Celtics fans are obviously upset. It's not that they're waving a white flag this year. Obviously, they're still going to be competitive. They're still going to fight in the first round, but it really much kind of shuts the door on what you were expecting out of this postseason. So I think that's kind of tough pill to swallow, especially when you lose a guy like Kyrie. But as you said, there's plenty of to watch this for the next couple of weeks and see how Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, these young guys do, how Terry can kind of step up with extra minutes. So it's still going to be a very interesting product on the court. See what Brad Stevens does, and again, it's all building towards next year, which again I think is a consensus that the Celtics are going to be a pretty serious problem next year.
I think the most interesting question is going to be whether they are a official contender next season, because I think you could make the case, especially whether LeBron stays in Cleveland or not. I think that you can make the case that the Celtics are going to end up being the favorites in the Eastern Conference, and that's really interesting. I don't know. I don't think they were this year. I think they will be next year. Mm-hmm. They might have been this year. I think we just didn't know how impressive Jaylen and Jason Tatum were going to be. So we'll see. I think that next season they will be right in there with everybody else. It'll be a lot of fun to watch. The rest of this season might be a little bit painful, but it might be really fun. We'll see. Celtics have 4 games left. May not see Rozier, may not see Tatum, may not see Jaylen Brown.
Everyone in bubble wrap for the rest of the regular season. It's going to be which seems like a good move at this point.
It's going to be the Kadeem Allen, Xavier Silas show. So I'm here for it. You can follow all of our stuff on masslive.com/Celtics. Make sure to follow Connor on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
It is Connor Ryan _93.
I'm Tom _NBA on Twitter, and we will talk to you guys sometime soon.